Good morning for the second time this weekend. It's Sunday the 2nd of February and I'm back with a questionnaire, or questions and answers. I've just had Joe go through my comments on vlog 210 and pick out the questions that were asked. I am going to use the names of the people who asked the questions because none of them were anonymous. They are actually written in the comments section, so they're there for anybody to read. And I've tried not to waffle. So let's go, Joe.
Okay, Lynn Cook says, how did you lose your sight?
Can you group the sight ones together?
I'll try.
Go on, give the other two as well then.
Oh, Susan One and Only, how did you go blind? And Sue Hayward, oh, how visually impaired are you? Can you make out shapes without clarity?
Right, 3 good questions. How did I lose my sight? I was perfectly normally fully sighted as a child and all the way through education. After I left school, I started work. And by the summer of 72, in the August, I woke up one morning with a headache and what seemed to be flu symptoms. This went on for about a week and got steadily worse. And eventually we went to see the family doctor, who sent me to a hospital in our nearest town. And from there I was rushed with the blues and twos going to a bigger hospital in Sheffield. And they thought I had meningitis. And I was in hospital from the I can remember it as if it was yesterday. I was in hospital from the 31st of August until Christmas Eve. And they never really did conclude what it was because I'd had it for more than 7 days. All the symptoms weren't clear. They did all the usual tests, still thought it might be meningitis. But ironically, about 7 years ago, I called for all my medical records and went to my doctor's surgery and took a friend with me who was a long-term nurse, and we went through all of my medical records because I needed to know. And apparently it's written in my medical records as a rare Canadian virus. Nobody ever mentioned that to me when I was going through it at the time. Nobody ever mentioned it to my mum and dad. Now, it left me almost totally blind, but with the help of medication they got some of my sight back. Excuse me, that's Alexa, stop. They got some of my sight back and then said that over the years, and as I got older and as I entered middle age and older age, my sight would fail. And I would say when Joe was a baby, so 26 years ago, I had enough sight to push him around in a pram and all that kind of stuff. It's gradually got worse and I'm now in a situation where I don't really have any sight. On a good day, with the wind in the right direction, I can tell the difference between light and dark. But I'm very good at going to bed at night and leaving lights on. Where Sue asks, can I, perceive shapes and things like that? No, not really. Sometimes I think my imagination, because I was fully sighted, my imagination makes me think. It sounds crazy, but my imagination makes me think I can see shapes because I know what to expect. So if somebody said, oh, the double-decker bus is just pulling up, in my mind's eye I see a double-decker bus, and sometimes my brain will confuse that with sight. But what happened to me was there's actually nothing wrong with my eyes. It's the optic nerves. So the virus actually burnt out the optic nerves one by one by one. And then you get beyond the stage of having any sight. And I suppose eventually what little bit of maybe light and dark perception I've got will go. But being blind is not what I expected. Being blind I thought would be just like, close your eyes, you see nothing. You don't even kind of register, I don't register it as that. I don't see, like, close my eyes and I see black. I think it's just what bit of optic nerve I have still got is always trying to do something. So I see millions and millions of little flashing yellow, pink and grey lights. But I'm so used to it now that I don't even think about it unless I mention it like this. Now I've mentioned it, I can see them, but most of the time I would just ignore them. So yeah, but please don't anybody feel sorry for me because being blind is not the worst thing that could happen to anybody. And for me today, it's perfectly normal. So, and I do say regularly to different people, there's never been a better time to be blind. Now, I'm only speaking for me, not for other blind people. I don't represent anybody else who's visually impaired. But with talking mobile phones, talking computers, talking microwaves, talking kitchen scales, talking bathroom scales, and all the access we have now to modern technology, being blind in 2020 is very different to when I was first visually impaired in 1972. Very different. It was quite isolating then. It's not now. And you know, there are things out there like PIP, which replace disability living allowance, to help us. I use a lot of taxis and things like that, which, you know, the government do help us to live as blind people. Whether we approve of which government's in power or not is irrelevant, we do get help. So I have nothing to grumble about today. And as I say, being blind, for me, was less of a disability than being fat when I was fat. Okay, let's go on to the next question, Jeff.
Okay, there are a couple about Dad. So Lynn Cook says, why don't you live with hubby? And Janice Ann said, did you ever live with your husband?
He's coming for lunch today, funnily enough. Why don't I live with hubby? You know, we got married in 1987 and we were very, very different people back then. And we do still love each other and we do still care for each other and we are still very, very, very good friends. Joe has an excellent relationship with his dad. And I do, and I mean, most Sundays Richard would come for lunch. He's a busy guy, he has his own life. We are so different today from the people we were in 1987. We actually lived together for 25 years. We didn't split up until about 7 years ago, something like that. I can't even remember when. But we came to a place in our lives where we realised that actually we would have a far better relationship if we didn't live under the same roof, because our interests, our likes, our dislikes, the things we do with our time. Richard's now retired, he took early retirement, so he has time on his hands and he's very into sport and stuff. I'm not into anything like that. We don't like the same sort of social things anymore, and it just works better for us to actually have two homes. So we live here, and Richard has a home about a mile down the road. There is a spare room there for Joe if he ever wanted it or needed it. We don't cut each other out of our lives. We talk every day. Well, we talk by text every day. We often have conversations. Richard is really, really kind to us, really generous to us. He supports us in every way possible. And what more can I say? The idea actually came, funnily enough, from a comedian called Kenny Everett, who some people will remember. We remembered reading about the fact that Kenny Everett and his wife lived next door to each other, and we both laughed and said, that has got to be the best plan for married people. You know, not every married person, of course, because some people absolutely wouldn't want to be, you know, more than a room away from each other. But we thought it was a great idea. And after a few years, we decided, yeah, we can explore this idea. It'll work for us. And I honestly think we're not divorced, we're separated. And that's only, I'm using the word separated because that's kind of the legal term for it. I honestly think that if we hadn't chosen to have separate homes at that point in our marriage, we would be divorced by now. And actually living under separate roofs and having something interesting to bring back to the relationship, because Richard's a great cinema goer and he loves music, and you know, we don't even like the same kind of music. So if Richard was here and he was playing music, I'd be moaning. And if I was playing music, Richard would be like, I'll tolerate it. Richard's a sports fanatic. I can't stand most sport these days. I used to be a big cricket fan, but you change as you get older. I'd say never. You know, maybe separate rooms works for some people, maybe separate homes works for others, but it works for us, and it's saved our marriage. So I can't knock it. But as I say, he'll be here. It's about 1:30 for his lunch today. And he'll stay for the afternoon, and it'll be good. So, yeah, did I answer that all?
Yeah, did you ever live with, or why don't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fine. Caroline C said, what was your past career?
Hi Caroline. When I left school, I went to work in a retail business, a department store, and I had, my aim was to be a window dresser, but my sight knocked that on the head. Especially seeing as even when I was partially sighted, I had no perception of colour anymore. So as somebody who had a reasonable degree of sight, didn't have colour, so I couldn't do anything to do with art. So after that, I decided that office work was probably the best option. And I went away to London. Well, I went to Surrey first, to Reigate, and then to London, to a college called Pembridge, and I trained in telephony and office work, typing, such like. Got all my RSAs, which was something you did back then, and I got a job. When I came back up to Nottinghamshire, got a job more or less straight away. with a big insurance company called the Prudential. And I have to say, I could not have worked for a better company. They were incredible. I had the best bosses, the best managers, the best co-workers, and I worked there for probably about 18 years, mainly in claims work, the best part of which, I love claims assessment work, sort of for vehicle claims and stuff like that. And I worked with some incredible people, and when I look back on it, because I was like 19 when I started there, and a lot of them were in their 40s and 50s, I wonder now whether many of them are left with us. But I had a brilliant career with the Prudential. They didn't treat me any differently to anybody else. We had to work hard for our money, but we were well rewarded. But I had to work as hard as everybody else. They never allowed you to pull the blind card and get out of anything. And, in life there have been times when I've done that. But they actually expected as much of me as they expected of everybody else. But they always found a way for me to be able to fulfil my potential. And I started work there in the days of the old sit-up and beg typewriters, went through all the electric typewriters, finally onto computers and things. And I honestly have to say, I could not have had a better employer. Loved it, absolutely loved being the woman from the Pro. On top of that, I've always been interested in voluntary work. I don't do so much now, but I used to do quite a lot of voluntary work, mainly involving telephone lines for advice for disability and stuff like that. Did a stint with Samaritans. And something I would say to anybody, if you're feeling unfulfilled and you know that you've got something to give, and most of us have, look at voluntary work. I was sitting with a lady in group who told me that she does voluntary work in that she speaks to groups of people who are newly diagnosed with diabetes. And I turned to her and I said, I didn't know you had diabetes. And she said, I don't. I just have a knowledge of diabetes and I have a gift of speaking. So putting those two things together, I volunteered to speak on behalf of the Diabetes Association or something. And she regularly just gives talks to people who've been newly diagnosed with diabetes. And I think, yeah, there's a woman who had working skills of teaching and sharing, and she's using it for something in her retirement that is really useful. She also got a wicked sense of humour, and I think she brings a lot of that to the table. But that's something I need to look at to get back involved with voluntary work, because there's so much need out there, so many organisations crying out for volunteers. And if you haven't noticed, I have got the gift of the gab. I used to be a prayer leader in church. I've hosted talks by Rosemary Connolly, Helen Shapiro, people like that. Rosemary Connolly talking about her Christian walk and her weight loss business. And I love doing that kind of thing. I love organising, that kind of event. And maybe, there's still some potential in the old bird. Maybe I need to get back into doing some voluntary work. So that question, Caroline, was precious because it's made me stop and think. Okay?
Okay, so Rosie Lass asked, how do you regroup after a sugar overdose? Do you have any tips or tricks?
Rosie, this is a brilliant question for this week. I had a major sugar overdose last weekend. I mean major. When I spoke about the amount of money I spent on the chocolate I ate the other night, I wasn't joking. £35, that wouldn't last me an hour when I go off on one. How do you regroup? For me, there is only one way, and I think Joe would echo this. You just have to stop, and you just have to go cold turkey, and you just have to make a decision that you're on a different track. And something Joe said the other day, he said the first time you make a decision, it's hard. But if you keep making that same decision, it gets easier. And that resolve gets stronger. So I made a decision on Tuesday to be back on plan. From the moment I woke up in the morning, all day I wanted to eat chocolate. But I didn't. I just kept saying, no, I'm on plan. And physically, I suffer, because I feel the withdrawals of the sugar. You might be like me, you might get a headache, you might feel lethargic, you might want to punch somebody's lights out or whatever, but I have to push through that. And I think it's the only way to do it. It was like when I quit smoking, I went from between 20 and 40 fags a day to nothing. Some people can gradually cut down. I can't do that with anything. I have my drugs of choice, and my drugs of choice are sugar, mainly chocolate, and things like that. And for me, there is now, I can save 10 sins for tonight and just have a bit of chocolate. I can't do that because I would spend the whole day from the moment I woke up obsessing about that bit of chocolate. It would ruin my day. So I'm at the stage again where I have to say I'm all or nothing. I can either feel crap because I'm eating sugar, my bones ache, I'm lifeless, my hair's just flat, my skin's bad, I feel dreadful, I sleep badly, I get leg cramps, or I can cut the sugar out and say, I'm just going to stick with this until it gets easier. And it does get easier after a few days. That's the only help I can give you from my experience. That's how I have to do it. But it's lovely to go to bed and sleep properly, to wake up not aching, for your hair to feel better, for your skin to feel better, not to have hours in the night when you're lying there with leg cramps wondering what to do with yourself. So I don't think, for me, there is any other way other than just going cold turkey. Okay, next. Is there another?
Bronwyn Payne asked, can I ask what motivated you to have tattoos?
I've got I've got 5 tattoos, I think. The first one I had is on the back of my shoulder, and it's a little snail. And it's in pinks and purples, and I had it done for my 40th birthday. Then I made and that was because I've always liked tattoos. I don't like this sort of tattooed head look. Like some people have tattoos on their faces, and they have their head shaved, and they have tattoos on their scalp and on their neck and on their hands and things like that. I don't go for that. That's not my taste. Some people love that. I'm not really into this like total body tattooing, but I do like tattoos, and for me they're just an art form. And I think one of the reasons I got into it was because Joe had some tattoos, and because Joe studied art and graphic design, he designed his tattoos. So I had one done on my 40th birthday. Then I had one done on my 45th birthday, which is a red admiral butterfly just on my leg, just above my right knee to the side. Then on my 50th birthday, I had conjoined hearts with 50 in Braille. So anybody seeing these dots would think they were just dots, but it actually is 50 in Braille. And when it was first done, because when you have a tattoo freshly done, it's raised, I could actually read it with my fingers, and it's down here on my calf, on my right calf. And then, so that's 1, 2, is that 3? How many? I've only got 4. And then this one on my arm is something Joe designed for me, and it was around the time that my best friend died. And it's actually clasped hands, and above it says Jane, and below it says Brum, which was the nickname of my best friend. So when he died, that was kind of in memory of him. In some ways I do regret that one a bit, because I intended to have it smaller and on the other arm, but the day before I was due to have it done, I burnt my arm getting something out of the oven, and the burn was right where I wanted the tattoo. So I had it on this arm. I regret it because it's a bit bigger than I wanted it. But having said that, no, it is for a reason, and I'm glad to have it today. But I think that's it. I've only got 4. Maybe it's time for another one. I was contemplating having the Slimming World logo somewhere, but I hadn't decided where. And then I wanted to have maybe a little tortoise, because that's how I did my journey, like a tortoise, not a hare. But when you go to tattoo parlours nowadays, they don't want to do tiny tattoos. Joe went looking to have a tiny robin, and they wanted to do it the size of the palm of his hand, and it's like, you just can't get the tattooist to do the tiny tattoos. So maybe I just need to do a bit more research and find myself a new tattooist. But yeah, I do intend to have more. And people say, is it really painful? Well, I don't find it so. But I have had friends who have. But when I had my tattoo done, I think it was the one, can't remember which one, but one of them done, my friend went with us, and she was 80 at the time. And she stood watching me have a tattoo, and she said, I've always wanted one. And then she said, I'm going to have one. And she had a dragon tattooed on her tummy. And she was 80 at the time. And she's so proud of her dragon. So any age group, tattoos. If you like them, you like them. If you don't, you don't. It's a personal preference, isn't it? And people have said to me in the past, it says in the Bible you shouldn't have tattoos. It says a lot of things in the Bible. It says you shouldn't tell lies, you shouldn't steal, you shouldn't, whatever. I remember nicking pence from work, when I was desperate for a biro. But, we don't get everything right all the time, and people will always disapprove of something we do, but I like my tattoos and definitely will have more. Was there a last question?
Yeah.
Thanks for that question, Bronwyn, because it was a good one.
Fiery Bell said, what about training to run a marathon?
I love this. It wasn't specifically a question, and it was Fiery Bell's suggestion about when I said I was looking for a new destination. Absolutely love this. Do you know, I wish I could. I wish I could be a runner. But the simple answer to why I'm not is my boobs are too big. I am so uncomfortable when I run. I can run. Well, I used to be able to run for the bus, but with Joe's hip problems, he's not allowed to run. But I could run for a bus with a friend, because not having sight, you need guidance. I could probably run, down the road or something. But to train to run a marathon, firstly, I don't think my boobs could cope with it. And secondly, I would have to have a running partner who was free to run and practice and develop my running skills and everything. And to find that, I think, would be about as rare as rocking horse poo. It's hard enough to find walking partners who can commit to giving you an hour here and there. To find somebody who could run with me daily. And it's ironic, really, because I did a video with Liz, the journalist, months ago. Liz has since gone on to have the most beautiful baby, and Liz is a runner. Her baby's gorgeous, he's a little boy. But Liz is a runner, and Liz would love to run with a blind person. But Liz and I don't think would be compatible anyway, because I'm 5'2" and Liz is about 6 foot. So I don't think our strides or our movements would ever match. But there are people out there who are willing to commit to this sort of thing. And there are some incredible blind runners out there. But I think you've got to be built for it. I think my legs could cope, I think my lungs could cope, but I don't think my chest could. Unless you bound me up like a little Chinese lady or something. So thanks, Fiery Bell, that is a brilliant suggestion. And maybe something more akin to couch to 500 yards rather than 5k would suit me. But running a marathon, I can say never. That's never going to happen for me. Right, that's all of the questions. That's been fun. Thank you for everybody who asked questions. And we will be back next weekend. Thanks for watching. Please leave comments and we'll see you next time. Bye.